feeling is that we're certainly in the West moving more towards an interest in the classical approach to all of Chinese medicine.
Welcome to Aim in Practice, where I have the immense pleasure of sitting down with a diverse array of practitioners, experts, and authors. And together we delve into the unique journeys and insights exploring this multifaceted world of wellness. And of course, life as a practitioner. I'm your host, Jess Reynolds, and today you're going to hear my conversation with Sarah Pritchard. Sarah is a pioneer in Tweina, which is a form of Chinese medical massage, and she's been in private practice since 1994. She's also the founder and director of Healing Path and also Black Health Complementary Health Centre in London.
Yeah, I think we've got a bridge at the moment from learning techniques and doing the skill set to coming back to the simplicity.
Sarah is known for her inspiring teachings and workshops where she shares her knowledge in an engaging and empowering way. Sarah's written the highly regarded books Chinese Massage Manual and Tuina, a manual of Chinese massage therapy, which have truly been essential texts in the field. And throughout our discussion, Sarah shares how Tweina serves as an incredible tool for practitioners, enhancing other modalities like acupuncture and of course massage, and we dive into the specifics of how these traditional practices can be used to promote both healing and relaxation.
And once the person who, as you've described, they're very heady, they've got a lot of very kind of intellectual concepts and all the rest, and they're good at their techniques, but they're obviously there because something else is, is calling them unconsciously perhaps.
Sarah also underscores the importance of mindfulness and presence, especially in therapeutic practices. This concept is not just about understanding the external techniques, but it's a journey to tuning into our own selves, and learning Tweina, by its very nature, enhances our awareness of what we bring into the treatment room. And Sarah's approach highlights how the practitioner's state of being not only affects themselves, but also has a direct and profound impact on the effectiveness of the entire healing process.
The creative arts and the healing arts aren't too far apart, really, in many ways, I think.
And we touch on the profound aspects of our inner lives, the interconnectedness of the healing arts, and how practices like Tweina can help our clients connect with these parts of themselves without the need for words, just with physical contact. Sarah truly is an inspirational and amazing human, and she offers her perspectives on how holistic practices, which of course in this context is about Tweina, can help us find that sense of peace and security, and how this practice is truly a transformative one for both practitioner and client. So with that, let's jump in. Before we jump into today's episode, let's give a shout out to our sponsor, Jane, an online clinic management software and EMR. Now, the Jane team understands that getting started with the new software, it can be quite overwhelming, but you're not alone. To ensure the onboarding process goes smoothly, Jane offers a free data import, a personalized call to set up your account, and of course, unlimited phone, email, and chat support. And with a transparent monthly subscription, you'll never be locked into a contract. So if you're interested in learning more, book a personalized demo at jane.app/switch. And if you decide to make the switch, don't forget to use the code AIM1MO at sign-up to receive a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. Well, Sarah, thank you very much for joining me. We were just talking before I hit record how I've actually been looking forward to this conversation for many, many years. When I was in school for acupuncture, when I first came across your work years ago, this is probably 13 years ago, 14, somewhere in there. And your Tweina textbook was super essential as I was going through acupuncture education, which I found very beautiful because we're talking about a book that is massage techniques, essentially. And it filled in so many beautiful gaps in my education as an acupuncturist. So how comprehensive and poetic and beautiful that book you wrote was very helpful for me. So thank you. And again, thank you for the book and for joining me in this conversation.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, Jesse. It's always very nice for me to hear that the book has proved to be useful to people and to acupuncturists who not necessarily Tweina trained or interested in doing that initially. And then suddenly they find the book and oh, great, let's help my theory as well as
Yeah.
interesting them in maybe Tweena as well.
Yeah. 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 I mean, when I was learning Tweina, I remember I went up to Dr. Do is his name. He's the gentleman who runs the college. And it's part of the curriculum for acupuncture. He's like, you need to learn Tweina. And I'm stubborn. I got my arms crossed. I go in there and I'm like, no, damn it. I'm an acupuncturist. I don't do any of this massage nonsense. And I was heels in the dirt about it. Lo and behold, years later, what I'm known for is teaching acupressure, meridian massage, Tweina. It's such a huge part of my world now. So yes, again, thank you, because your what you've written and your perspective on Tweina and acupressure, meridian massage, all those things was an influence for me. So thank you.
It's such a pleasure.
And I'm curious if we can start with just talking about a little bit of your own personal history and what exactly Tweina is.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, Tweena is, as we know, it's a relatively modern term. So, the first time we really hear Tweena, which means push, Twi, after one of the techniques, pushing techniques, Twi, and Na, grasping, was the Ming Dynasty. And the thinking is that actually that was probably related to pediatric Tweena. So the first mention of Tweena rather than Anmo, which would have been its original name, would have been probably the children's massage from the Ming Dynasty. And then once we got later on into more modern times and we had the TCM schools beginning to open in China around the 1950s, then the name Tweena became synonymous with TCM Chinese medicine. And Anmo became connected to the folk tradition, right? So there was a definite move to separate Tweena, as in hospital TCM style, from Anmo or Anma. So it's an interesting time for us now, because my feeling is that we're certainly in the West moving more towards an interest in the classical approach to all of Chinese medicine. We've gone from the 5 elements in the UK, it was only 5 element training, then it was TCM. And now, over the last, I don't know, maybe particularly the last, let's say 8-9 years, and with increasing speed, a huge interest from students in looking more at the roots and the classical approach. And certainly this is interesting in regard to Tweena, or Anmo as it was, because we might say some of the feeling aspects, shall I say for now, may have got a bit lost along the way. And that Tweena became either very almost mechanical or a little cut off from the feeling sense. And certainly, I think we've noticed it in the UK years ago. It's different now, but that there was and I've seen it in other countries that I've worked in as well, including Canada, it's a very yang approach, I would call it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, and the same is true if you go to China, and you can go to different parts of the country and you'll see a very yang approach, very northern style, we might say, approach. And we go to the south, particularly the southwest, when I was there, and you see a very kind of gentle, fluid approach. And I mean, it's the same with acupuncture. I've seen some of the most beautiful, graceful Tweena and Mo in China, and some of the most awful looking bodywork I've ever seen. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's the same
Yeah.
with. So it's interesting, but I think we're at a time when the holistic approach to all of that is of great interest to students of acupuncture and Tweina and all of Chinese medicine. Where are the roots? Where's all this come from?
Yeah.
Because we know that all of our needling techniques come from the hands. They all come from Anmo.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that, I always say to students, in my opinion, if we ever had the opportunity in the West of shifting around the educational program, we would teach channels and points with hands first and all the hand techniques. And then the needle would be very, very simple, yeah, as an extension of the hands.
Mhm.
And as soon as, because I find this in teaching, the people that I'm generally teaching are all acupuncturists. Some of them have never done any body work at all before and have come to it because they're just wanting to feel a bit more confident about touching a body, for example. Yeah. And then as they go, they discover, oh, okay, actually, this is now improved all of my needling techniques. And now I understand why I might be using that technique as opposed to that one. And where I might prefer to use a hand rather than a needle on a certain point or with a particular patient or along the course of a channel, whatever it is, they develop a flexibility. And a little bit like you said, actually, just now, Jessie, those who come with, well, I think I need to get a bit more confident with body work, but it's just going to be an adjunct to my acupuncture. Yeah, end up being really good at it. So it
Mhm.
takes. I've got one student actually like that at the moment who came for that very reason, and she has ended up kind of going, oh my gosh, she's really naturally very good, which she wasn't expecting, and is now finding that she's using more work with her hands than with the needles. The needles have become more minimal to the work that she does with her hands. So that's the beauty of this. And I think for me, I'm very interested in, I guess, returning what there always was. There's nothing new, is there, under the sun usually, but returning the feeling aspect to the work. Um, I mean, I can't count the amount of times I've been in a group of very experienced acupuncturists who've been working, 20, even 30 years, who in a group, you'll show them something very simple with the hands. For example, we'll just say, okay, we're just going to apply MOFAR, which is a circular rubbing technique, which you'll be familiar with, over, REN 12, the collecting point for the stomach. We're just going to apply that. And we're going to start to breathe in the golden color that we might associate with the earth element. And at the same time, I just want you to come into a very gentle anfar on some stomach 36 or spleen 9 or one of the earth points that is easily accessible with the hand, and just come and hold that. Start to breathe in the yellow and come to a very empty space, a very empty state. Right? Very soft, very gentle. And they'll do this for however long we're experimenting with this. And they'll go, oh my God, my instinct for years, I've wanted to do that, but I thought I'd better not. Almost like they're in the kind of closet somewhere. It's like they're coming out of the touch closet or something. I've
Mhm.
wanted to, but maybe because of the training, the style of training, or because, the various associations of their, acupuncture associations may have rules and regulations around, oh, well, we can't do this or we can't do that.
Mhm.
So it sort of makes people fearful, puts them off doing something which is very innate and natural, which is
Mhm.
where all of this came from, of course. It's as we know, it's instinctive. Anmo, later Tweina, is probably the first body work that there was. I mean, there may well have been others all over the world that were around at the same time, but certainly looking at these ancient oracle bones and tortoise shells with these inscriptions of the shamans of the time, already we can see, because they were good at, scribing things down, we're seeing these shamans using their hands and the descriptions of what they may be doing, and questions which may be coming up from, and we don't know, do we? Thousands of years ago. Yeah. It's very difficult to date. It's all guesswork, really, isn't it? But from ancient times, thousands of years before the Common Era. And we know that therapies like, even shiatsu derives from Tuina. Tuina, Anmo, it would have been, went to Japan, went to Korea, and to other countries in the East, and they then develop along their own lines. Yeah. So, even talking to an osteopathic colleague at the centre that I've got in London here, she reluctantly said to me, because she's quite interested in Tweina, she said, I don't know if you've read the autobiography of the forerunner or forefather of osteopathy, but he was an American doctor who had been, a bit dissatisfied with the results that he was getting with various pain issues and this and that. And it was a time in America where a lot of Chinese were there doing building work. And he was observing the workers treating one another with Anmo. And he started to adopt what they were doing. So again, we know that all these relatively modern body works like osteopathy or chiropractic, which I think is more popular in Canada and the States, whereas here it's more osteopathy. They all derive, you can trace them all back to one or two of those Tweina techniques, those Anmo techniques, and how someone's developed it in their own creative way. So it's the great grandmother, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I found there's many different directions we could go based on your description, but I'll start by agreeing that I found my education in the world of medicine was exclusively TCM, and then I did a Western nutrition course, which was great. And then from there, went about my practice, well within the world of TCM. But a number of years after I started practicing, I branched out my continuing education. And what I found so fascinating is it didn't seem to matter which program, which course I took. Always I'd be like, oh, well, this is just this TCM technique. Or no, we learned this in Tweina. So I agree with you that much of the techniques either directly borrow from the principles of traditional Chinese medicine and Tweina or Anmo, or coincidentally have stumbled upon the same techniques and approach. But there was one thing in particular that you were discussing, which I'm very, very fascinated with and pretty much entirely preoccupied with these days. And this is what you've observed also. It's this engagement, this desire or a drift towards some more of the original philosophical approaches that we take to wellness and healing.
Right.
As I mentioned, I do have a continuing education company, and part of it is to figure out, well, what courses do people want? So I ask this question, like, what do you want? By and large, the answer is technique. I want to learn how to perform a very specific technique to fix a very specific problem. So that's the courses that people say they want. But then when I ask other questions about what is it you love most about your job? What do you find most challenging about your job? It's what do I love most? I love the sense of connection. What do I find most challenging? These moments when I'm not too sure what to do. What do I want to learn more of? My intuition. And when I teach acupressure, Tweina, to massage therapists, I teach technique, point location, any of the actual physical techniques, I say for the last 3 hours of a 2-day workshop. The first day and a half, he's just talking about the theory and the philosophy, and I see people's eyes just like widen with bliss.
Yeah.
So I would appreciate if you're open to it. Could we talk a little bit more about your experience with this trend people seem to be following? Do you want to move more into the inner school of
Mm.
traditional Chinese medicine or Anmo? And how's that unfolded for you in your practice in your education?
Yeah. This has been very interesting. So the way the work for both clinically and in a teaching setting has developed over quite a long period of time now. And I think that my first Tweina teacher was back in the year 2000, so it's 24 years of teaching Tweina, and 30 years of being in practice for me now. So it's really interesting to see what's going on. And what interests me very much now, Jesse, is helping students and practitioners to do something very simply with a very empty state, in a wu-wei state, to drop into presence. If they can drop into presence and come and touch 2 points along a particular channel, for example, with a clear intent that that's the channel that they're interested in connecting to, then the results they will have will be profound from something very, very simple. So, yeah, I think we've got a bridge at the moment from learning techniques and doing the skill set well to coming back to the simplicity. I think people, when they first start, want a lot of complexity. All right, I need to be able to do this. You think, okay, let's start with, and I've come back to Anfar. If you can't do good Anfar, your Rofar won't be any good. Your Ijijan won't be any good. Your Gunfar won't be any good. It has to come from the Anfar. So taking the time to do something that seems, if you were observing it, it seems like nothing's happening. Yeah. So it looks like she's just standing there, with her fingers or her thumbs on these 2 points. That's that. What's she doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And that's why, from the student's point of view, they have to feel it. It's all very well and good me saying, hold this point, I want you to focus on the spleen primary meridian, hold the source point and hold the C point. Yeah. And I'm thinking, what? Yeah. What does she mean? What's she talking about? And then I'll talk them through it. So I very deliberately teach in real time. So right, well, and I will do it usually on Isabel, who works with me, or on another student, and I'll say and I'll talk them through it as if it were a meditation. Drop into the point. Imagine the chi extending into the 2 points. Imagine breathing in from the Dow. Breathe the gold in through the Dow. Remember your roots. Drop in. So they're hearing my voice. And they've got their fingers or thumbs on the 2 points. And now we're going to do a little bit of Burning Mountain. So just imagining we're moving in very subtly, in. And then we're coming out very soft. And they start to get it. So they're relaxed because I'm talking them through it. So they don't have to, they're not worried. They're relaxed now. And the receiver, who's the more important person, actually, who's also the student, is just receiving whatever's happening at the time. And at the end of a workshop, then we'll come to feedback. Well, what did you feel? So, yes, you, the giver, how was that to give? But more importantly, the receiver, what did you feel? How did you feel? What was the effect? Because when something's embodied and we've felt it, then it becomes a value. It's become experiential. It's become embodied, either that channel or that technique, that way of working. Yeah. So, so for example, bringing back in this yin approach is, it's a lot of people we see here in the UK, and they're chronically deficient, chronically depleted, overworked. It's London, where I have my clinic. Yeah, they're exhausted most of the time, right? And if we're building resources of chi blood fluids, then we need a more subtle, soft approach, and we need to be able to move into those deeper areas, even into the yuan qi area, for stimulation of, for example, the 8 extraordinary meridians. So menopausal women, for example, I would utilize the yin wei mai quite frequently, but I would do it with my hands. Using the subtler, deep qi style of Genfa, vibration technique, not the very physical style that moves the blood, right? But more of a subtle approach that tells the body we're vibrating down to those deep waters, yeah, of the sea of our yuan qi. And what I found with students is that once that door is open, like you were saying, there's a kind of, oh my God, thank God. Or you said bliss. Yeah, it's like, hallelujah. Someone is almost speaking and giving me the permission to do what I instinctively want to do. Actually, is often the thing. Okay, now feel it and let's see what happens. What do you feel? What do you feel? What happens? Because in my view, we're touching. So An doesn't just mean press, it means touch. Yeah. So An Mo, sometimes called An Chow, is the touching bridge. So here's my intention to nourish stomach yin. Yeah. And here's the touching bridge. I'm anchoring that now with my hands, my fingers. And it seems, this is patient feedback actually, there was a patient I saw last night and I thought that was perfectly said. And she said, oh my God. She said, just loved Tweina. She said, acupuncture has its place. She said, I'm not saying that, but it's just a very different quality of what I receive. Yeah. As a patient. And she said, it's like, she said, I just feel it in my body. It feels anchored. It feels, she described it, she said, do you know weighted blankets? I said, oh yes. I said, I don't have one, but I've heard of a weighted blanket. She said, it's very comforting to have a weighted blanket. She said, that was her analogy. Yeah. And I think that students and practitioners are looking for the roots. They're looking for, or they're interested in, what is the consciousness of the channels at their different levels, and how can we potentially touch those? Yeah. In many ways. They're looking for, I call it feel, find, and follow. Yeah. To develop that sense of being able to hear and see with the hands, but also with the entire body and field, which may be regarded as Wei Qi. It's part of our Wei Qi, the energy field or auric field, as some people might call it. And that seems to be the movement. So the more I do with that, so I'm in the habit now and have been for a while of, I'll pick a doorway of interest with students maybe I've worked with in the past, and I'll go, okay, we're going to do, let's move into the area of the 8 extraordinary meridians. We're going to explore the Chow vessels, for example. And then we'll have 2 days on the Chow vessels, touching into those portals, the points, the doorways, but really dropping into that. And okay, so what am I doing? And the work is very subtle with the hands. It's very yin, yeah. And then at the moment, I'm working with a group on kind of the opposite end of the scale, on the Jin Jing, on the channel sinews. But working it on body. What does it mean? What are the metaphors? The channels are constantly changing. The vibration of that person and all their channels, including certainly these that seem more dense to us, muscles, tendons, ligaments, fascia, they're not separate from somebody's life, from their thoughts, from their emotions. And that is where people are getting interested. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I find it's interesting, and I'm curious, just as a general curiosity, how much of the drift towards this more yin style treatment is therapist driven and how much is client driven, or how much is it just this is the general energy that exists in our world today? Because as you describe the Londoners you work with, that's the same description I could give of the Calgarians I work with. Overworked, undernourished, exhausted, wiped out.
Right.
And where once upon a time, maybe a more yang, vigorous style may have been suitable, I truly can't think of a single client of mine who that's the appropriate style. Virtually everybody I'm working with, this yin style, this slow, very nurturing, very let's move into the somatics, the body, right? So it's really interesting how that seems to be a worldwide trend and not just locally. So lots of curiosity there.
I think you're right. And I think it is, it's a movement of the time. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And hearing you describe also this idea, the last part where you mentioned that people are becoming curious about how there is no separation or distinction between the sinew channels and the muscle channels, or the fascia, the energy channels. We've done a remarkably adept job at distinguishing and separating each one of these for explanatory purposes. I think that's something that is immediately clear when one goes to acupuncture school, is how they have taken poetry of Chinese medicine and they have separated it into distinct characters that one can study. It has its value. My current belief is its value is relatively limited because the beauty of Chinese medicine is that there are no distinct parts. We can distinguish them for the sake of conversation, but this idea that it is one holistic unit, it's integral and it's baked right into the philosophy, TCM, Anmo, Tweina. So that drift of people getting validation in their innate experience, knowing deep inside that their intention changes things, their intuition is essential. But having gone through school and being told the right technique is to push right here for this amount of time, count to 10, move to the next one. So there's this dissonance between the intuition, the desire, the innate knowledge that everything is one, and our common education. So beautiful that we're seeing similar trends.
Yeah, you do feel like once people have left, and that's, I don't know if the same is becoming true in Canada now, but certainly in the UK, the feeling is that there's quite a level of frustration, I would say, in the students and in the teachers. A lot of the teachers, I'd say, in the big colleges of Chinese medicine, particularly, actually, I should probably say acupuncture in the UK, that things are ready for a big change, but no one quite knows how to do it because things have been set up a certain way, right? But there's definitely a friction there in a much more evident way than there was, 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? So we're on the cusp of another area of growth here, I hope, and creative evolution. We've got to bring the feeling and the intuition back into the medicine, the art, the creativity, the flow.
Yeah, that is genuinely my current life's purpose, is to figure out how to shift the education, primary education for wellness practitioners of all sorts, and create a re-education system for those who were caught in this in-between time, going to school and essentially learning years of mathematics. Of course,
Yes.
not actually learning math, but I use the analogy of math versus poetry, and bringing
Yes.
back in the art and bringing back in the heart, bringing back in the
Yes.
intuition is so important.
Yes.
And it sounds like obviously you're very much in alignment with that. And I'm curious, when you are working with practitioners who are very heady, they're technique oriented, for better or worse, what steps do you take to sort of help people make contact with their intuition, or remember that they have an intuition, however is the best explanation of this? But how do you help people recognize that their intuition really matters when it comes to any healing modality, but particularly a hands-on modality?
I think that's also where them being in a feeling state. So when they're the receiver, so if we're working on whatever the subject is, whether it be a channel, a pair of channels, or an area such as the digestion, then once they've felt it, then they go, oh, what's this? Yeah? Oh. I say, well, okay, all that's happening now is we're coming to hold ladder 1, yin tang, and do 24. We're making a kind of, elongated sort of triangular shape and just very gently holding in an empty state, maybe with a blessing. So I always say to students, I bring in a blessing, and we could call it a treatment principle, right? Or it could just be a blessing, may you be well, peaceful, and happy. Something very simple. If you don't know, you just, let them be well. May you be well, peaceful, and happy. May you be free. Because a lot of what we're doing is creating freedom. Freedom of movement, freedom of expression of the true Shen, the true nature of that person, and what they've come here as Shen, as spirit incarnate, to evolve. If we take the Taoist notion that we're 50% morphology and 50% astrology or spiritual curriculum or lesson, then may that unfold in freedom. Yeah. And once the person who, as you've described, they're very heady, they've got a lot of very kind of intellectual concepts and all the rest, and they're good at their techniques, but they're obviously there because something else is, is calling them unconsciously, perhaps, to a class that I'd run. Why have they been drawn, Once they felt it and they've been in a group with others that are also doing the same, I think they open up a doorway of curiosity that's already there, but perhaps they've kept it under slight lock and key for some reason. Maybe just because they've been told, oh, that's not useful, because there has been a habit of really disencouraging students from using any form of intuition at all. So they've had so many, oh no, you can't do, oh no, you don't, no. If a student comes and says, well, I feel that, oh no, we don't feel anything, no. I've had students come to me and say that's been their experience. Right?
Yeah.
No, stick to the, you see, so for me, that's very old hat now. We need to move away from that. Very, very much. because in a way, then you're just encouraging that person who's got lots of great information. They've learned very diligently. They've learned all the techniques really well, but they're kind of, they've been cut off. They've been a good student in the system, and yet it's cut something off from them that was probably innate and why they got into it in the first place.
Right. Yeah, I really love always coming back to this idea of artistry. And I grew up in a trades family with carpenters and plumbers and all of these. And even in the trades, there's this essential ingredient of creativity that comes after one has mastered tools. So there's this period of time, this apprenticeship where it's like, don't worry about creativity right now for this very limited period of time. I'm going to teach you how to use the tools and the techniques. Now, once you've got a good grasp on the tools and techniques, which quite frankly takes a very short period of time, it doesn't take that long.
Yes.
After that, it's all about creativity. And if one sticks to the apprentice level of techniques, then the furniture maker is going to make a bunch of IKEA tables as opposed to making a work of art that lasts generations, to use the analogy of a tradesperson.
Yeah.
But I agree, like it's the same thing. We're taught these formulaic ways of treating, and beautiful, essential for that apprenticeship period. But beyond that, it's the beauty is in the creativity and the intuition and the sensing out what the fingers feel, particularly between. And I think that's the thing that just what I fell in love with is knowing that when I put my hands down on somebody and I just drop everything and tune in, not to what I feel in my fingertips, but what I feel in my gut, what I feel in my heart, what I feel in this clench of my jaw, or a weird pain in my hip, whatever I'm feeling in my body is exactly, that's the best guide I've ever come across for treatment is,
There's so much to that. Feel, find, follow. Yeah. Because, as you say, some people they're very, kinesthetic. So they'll feel something in their own bodies, as you've just described. And to know that, don't be frightened to ask something about that. Don't you have shoulder pain? Or is there something going on here? Yeah. Or there's just a sense of something. And then you're allowed to follow it so that it's. So I think everybody in acupuncture school, there's a teaching of, okay, you've made your diagnosis, you've selected a group of points, based on the patterns that you've learned. Again, more separation, lots of boxes. Here's the little group of points that you're going to do, and you needle those points, and you retain those needles, and then you sit down. 20 minutes. Or you go to another room even and do the same thing with someone else. Well, that's become a model, hasn't it? A business model. I think anybody who's done Tweina or Anmo wants to, they go, oh my God, I can't imagine ever leaving the patient. Because they're now integrating the hands, the needles, the moxa, the gua sha, whatever it is that they want to use. These become the colors and in their palette, like the various techniques, like the various needling techniques.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It can't be
I
fixed
recall
doing that and then because you know what it's like. You get to you think, oh, I've got some ideas, and you get to the body and you go, no, or actually that.
Yeah. And the experience for the client as well. I do have some clients who they just want to have their needle nap. They just want to have the needles put in. Beautiful and effective. It works well for them. But then there's a great deal of the other clients I have where they don't want a needle nap. They want a couple minutes downtime where it's just them with the experience and their thoughts or feelings, right? But the very vast majority of the time, I think back to what I was taught in school is this traditional medicine is a three-legged stool. And all three legs need to be present for balance. And that's going to be the internal medicine, nutrition, herbs, things like that. But also, in my opinion, that gets into psychology for internal medicine. well, that seems counterintuitive. I package psychology and internal medicine. The next is energetic medicine. That's what we do with the needles, with the flow of chi, right? And then there's the physical medicine, the actual contact we make. And so often you get a massage therapist who is physical medicine. You get an acupuncturist who's energetic medicine. You get a herbologist who's internal medicine, or a counselor. But when we do all three of these legs of the stool at the same time in a session, that's when people come out like with that pan-dimensional look on their face. You know, they're like, I went 10D on that one. You know, it's that combination they get. Yeah.
Absolutely right. Oh yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? And actually it takes, really, of course, this would have been the original approach. We are back to the realms of the shaman. How flexible can we, as the therapist, practitioner, healer, whatever we want to call ourselves, be with this person, with this person, with this person, with this person? Yeah. How much have we cultivated the various elements within ourselves? Can I shape shift myself, a little, in order to help this consciousness here? And how separate are we?
Yeah.
Right.
That's beautiful. And it kind of gets into another curiosity I have about yourself, having been in this industry for so long and having not only taught, but I'm sure seen thousands of clients, is for anybody who's practiced for even months, we know that it's very emotionally and energetically demanding. So how do you go about offering that, where you meet people? This is probably not the right terminology, so forgive me if it doesn't land, but you meet people energetically where they're at and figure out what character you can adopt to best facilitate their well-being. Or how do you just make sure that throughout all of the different energies you encounter, that at the end of the day, you're still smiling and you're still happy and healthy? Essentially what I'm asking is, what's your self-care?
So I think one of the big things for me is, if I'm able, which I am more often than not, once I'm in my treatment space, because it's very familiar to me now, I'm very in that space with the person. And if I remain there, my energy, it feels like then really we are a conduit. Yeah. We become that conduit of not my chi per se, but drawing in the chi of the Dow. So, and being in the empty state, present, certainly helps that. From a very practical point of view, I'm getting older now, Jesse, so I take breaks more often. So I will schedule in time just to be away. I will go to Cornwall, which is down in the southwest by the sea, to nature, to the granite, which is very grounding and pulls things out that need to be cleansed, by the Atlantic. So I'm then fed by the big sky and the mountains, because London, just being in London is challenging. It's very yang. And so I do remove myself in order to have pauses. Yeah. If I'm feeling, I don't feel 100% optimal, then it's better to take a break. Than push through. I like that. Push through. There are different ages and different stages. So I think I've been working for about 30 years now, so I wouldn't be I won't be working at quite the same amount of patients as I would have done 15 years ago, perhaps. I work at the level that feels right for me now. Yeah. and will make adjustments as and when I need to. But I think the breaks, I do talk to other students and practitioners about that, particularly those who have been working for quite a while. I say, it's okay, take a break. Yeah. Or I would say roughly every 6 weeks. For me, that works. Yeah. Every 6 weeks, you take a week off. Or maybe you need to take a bit longer off. Yeah. And that's fine. Yeah. In fact, it's essential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
When you
appreciate that.
come back,
Mm-hmm.
refreshed.
Yeah.
So it gives you the opportunity to do a little bit more Qigong, to do a bit more meditation, or just switch off and walk and read a novel.
Yeah.
Something different. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you. Now I'm mindful of the time, and I do have two questions for you remaining, if that's okay. One of which would be, what's next? Understanding what your career has been to this far, and kind of where you're at presently. What do you imagine is down the pipeline for you with your career?
Right. Well, it's interesting because I'm now running my own Tuina diploma course. It's like an apprenticeship diploma course, really, Jesse. I mean, I only take 10 students. Yes, it's very small. Yeah, each week. And I work with that group then over an 18-month period. They have my online course as well, which I call the walking, talking version of the book. So that becomes part of the course material because it's easier for them to learn, the skill-based things and to listen to me going on and on to inspire them a bit. So they have the online course and the book, but so I'm on we're coming to the end of the second group. So that was an interesting step because it was it was COVID, so everything was BC, right? BC before COVID, and then after COVID. So that was really an opportunity for me to step away from teaching in a very formal setting at colleges, which had been coming anyway. But it really gave me an opportunity to go, that's enough of that for me now. And come on, let's do this that I've been talking about for so long. Now's the time. Let's just do it. And let's let this happen very organically. So the people that came, I knew it would be a very organic group, and it was. And then we're now coming toward the end of the second group, and then the third group will begin in September. So very steady, nothing rushed, plenty of time over the 18 months to work with the group. So that's very enjoyable. And I'm free, really, to do things without the restrictions of a particular college environment, right? So that seems to suit me better. So that will continue and develop. Now we've got that one underway. And as will the work that I'm doing there's a very interesting approach in Italy. So I work a lot with Paolo and Lydia at the Dow Academy in Milan. And it's interesting because in Italy, if you're interested in Chinese medicine, you do Tweina because you have to be a doctor of Western medicine to practice acupuncture. Right? I know. So what's very interesting is when I go to Italy to teach, you've got this extraordinary group of students who understand the work very well. So they know all the theory, etc. But they're a bit freer than what you would generally find in acupuncture schools, really in most of the other places that I've taught in, because they're not worried about the needle. So they can explore and develop in a much freer way. And that's been very interesting. So I'm going back there again in June to work with them on some digestive work and on the application of Tweina and the six sounds Qigong in practice as well. That's another area that interests me a lot. So that will be another development. And I hope to also, if we get the chance, I don't know if it'll happen this year or the following year, but to develop some more work online, both for patients and students, and for patients more as a resource, some meditations and some self-cultivation work for them, so that it adds to the empowerment of those coming to us for help, rather than them always feeling reliant on coming to me or another. So I think that's something I'd like to develop. So that's where we're going, I think, for this first part of the year anyway, Jessie. I hope to come back to Canada. I had a teaching trip booked in 2020, which for obvious reasons we had to cancel. We're hoping to come back soon. I'm thinking it will probably be next spring. Yeah, to teach the live component that goes with the online course, because several students have been in touch with me, mainly in Canada and America, and they've taken the online course. Like, when can we do some of the live component? Some of them have been waiting for 4 years, so we're pleased. Be very pleased to come over there again if possible, and teach some of the students that we've met before, some of those that have worked, the online that I don't even know yet.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will happen. We'll see.
I can't help but appreciate how similar our paths and trajectories are. So very grateful for that understanding, and feeling very similar to you about the the shackles of college teaching. Beautiful, but very, very limiting. So I really, really value and appreciate these opportunities and experiences that you're having, and the courses and curriculum that you're developing to work outside of the more strict and stringent systems that are out there. So the last question I have, which I ask virtually everybody, and this is a personal pet project I've had on the go now for years, is this question. In your experience, both as a practitioner, a teacher, as well as somebody who has likely experienced many different treatments from different practitioners, in your opinion, what makes a practitioner successful?
Good question. What makes a practitioner successful? Well, I think it has to be love. It's a vocation. I think those that are successful and have longevity in it, Jessie, and continue to be in love with it, and constantly diving into different areas and drawing those to them and exploring them for their whole lives, are those that have a genuine love for the medicine and for other human beings, and want to support, inspire, and offer a potential for someone to move into change and freedom in their lives.
That's beautiful.
Those are the good practitioners, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. It's been a very interesting project talking with so many different practitioners and asking that same question. And it's been very, very enlightening. And it is surprising how often things like love come up. So thank you very much.
Oh, it's such a pleasure.
Before we wrap things up and tie a bow on our conversation, is there anything else that you would like to add, some territory we didn't dig into that you would love to explore?
Well, I mean, there's so much. We could spend hours, couldn't we? Because we could go on into
We probably could. Yeah. I
I
feel
think
like we've just barely scratched the surface of topics that
was,
we could talk about.
it was funny because I've been asked to write an article for a journal, European journal, and of course, you always have a very wide, write about anything, and you go, oh my god,
Yeah.
right, okay, here we go
Yeah.
then. But I was just thinking about looking back at the classics, and obviously, one of the big canons that was lost was referred to in the Su Wen Ling Shu was this canon between Huangdi and Qibo, which was Huangdi, Qibo, and Mo.
Mm-hmm.
Huangdi and his doctor Qibo having a conversation, which was a whole canon of a book all about Anmo, right? Now, I hope this might turn up one day, because you never know, right? These things have a way of appearing, don't they? Like the Dead Sea Scrolls, why does something appear at a certain time? So maybe it wasn't completely destroyed, and maybe it will appear again. It's slightly frustrating that, we have mention of it, we know it exists, it's referred to in other texts, but we don't have it. However, if we take the notion that all things exist at once in the Great Tao, I think that the information that's there is coming through anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, a whole book, which would have been humongous, based on the spiritual questions as well, around this touching bridge and on the channels of consciousness, which is what they are. That area for me is absolutely fascinating. The touch with the consciousness of something, the vibration of a particular channel quality, the relationship between these two, the receiver and the giver, the practitioner and the person that's come for help, and who's really being helped, because it's a mutual relationship, this, isn't it? Yeah. Am I really doing something to you? Or am I just staying out of the way as much as possible and allowing, through bringing some consciousness through thought, feeling, and touch? So I hope I'd love to find, in my dreams, I found the book, somewhere in the middle of China, right? Well, someone doesn't comes to light, but it just tells you how much there was there. And one of the things, one of the elements that does come out of that, though, is that in the Su West, it's in the Ling Shu, is one of the aspects which comes out in one of the chapters is when a question comes is, I think Huang Di was asking Qibo, well, how would you approach the treatment of an invasion that's a mild invasion of wind or something like this, mild exogenous factor? And his response was, make sure there's more massage. You would add more massage, and the needling would be very superficial. And then another aspect of it was with point stimulation, the best effects that one will have is to massage the point first, then needle it, then remove it and massage the point after. Now that's in the classics. Now, and this is where things are at odds, because if we've got colleges or associations telling students not to touch a point, right? Don't touch the point. And yet that would be in a direct conflict with what arose in the classics. So again, my view is the hands and the needles, there's a flow between them, and they shouldn't be so separate. Yeah, you need to, if you're going to get a good lifting and thrusting technique, you need to understand NAFA. If you're going to get a good rotation technique, understand ROFA, and primarily understand ANFA. So it's going to be an interesting journey over the next 10 years.
It is. It is. My suspicion is, and this is a wild speculation, my suspicion is there will be less and less interest in the practice of acupuncture itself, and more interest in the practice of Tweina, or what we'd call here acupressure, but more and more interest in people using and utilizing hands and less to do. That's my suspicion. Again, it could be totally wrong, but looking at the trends of what I've seen, and I can't disagree with that. I think it's accessible to so many more people.
Life. Yeah. Without necessarily having, not that there's anything wrong with the needle, but sometimes one thing is going to be more appropriate than another, or they can be used together for flexibility.
Yeah. And I'm such a fan of this medicine of ours. However, it's not that accessible for a number of reasons. I mean, going to school to become an acupuncturist, there's 3 to 4 years plus an undergrad, and who knows how much money. So to consider that it's possible to make our medicine accessible, meaning there's less of a barrier of entry to practitioners, but also, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but in Canada, people don't choose to go to an acupuncturist. They don't choose to go to a TCMD. They go there as a last resort. They might go there because they've been referred by somebody. But when they think I'm going for wellness, they're going to go to a massage therapist, chiro, a physio. Right. So this also exposes this beautiful medicine to far more of the public to benefit from it. If we can just acknowledge the fact that it is just as powerful, arguably in some cases more powerful, to use these fancy tools at the end of our arms as it is to use needles, I think is imperative.
Yeah, and that would be very nice to see that growing and to open that doorway to people, because like you say, it's very true actually, just from a practical point of view, the training in acupuncture is so expensive, isn't it? I think this is in the UK now as well, that limits people in terms of whether they would even think about doing it in the first place, right? I think it can put off people who might naturally be very good practitioners and healers. Yeah, there will be certain aspects of it that they get put off, which is a shame, I have noticed something, Jesse, that the practitioners that seem to have a little something, I don't know, a little bit of sparkle, shall we say, are often those who come from an artistic background of some kind, or a practical or artistic background. And I've noticed that they tend to gravitate towards me. So I'll go around and go, oh, what was it? Oh, architecture. Okay. Well, yes, actually, I did graphic design at so-and-so time. And, oh, okay. Well, I have come from a dance background. This one's been from an acting background. And it's interesting to see, rather than just those who've come from a very science background, right? So there is a difference, and there is an understanding of some of the, maybe let's say the more shamanic aspects from those who've already worked in the creative arts. The creative arts and the healing arts aren't too far apart, really, in many ways, I think.
They're basically the same thing.
Exactly so.
Well, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation, and once again, I'm very grateful to have the time to chat with you and get to know you a little bit. And I look forward to hopefully doing it again sometime in the future. Maybe you come to Canada, or maybe I make my way over to the UK. Nevertheless,
well, if you do, Jesse, let me know. If you're ever coming to the UK, you must let me know. And I do hope that we'll come to Canada next year and we'll get the opportunity to meet.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Well, thanks again, and I'll hopefully chat with you soon.
Thank you very much for having me on the program, Jesse. Thank you.